Hey guys, this is Tearless here with another Warlords of Draenor beta video. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the last of the mage specs in Frost Mages. Just like Arcane and Fire, Frost Mages really have not received many new changes to their class. I think the biggest change that you see the most is going to be the new spell visuals that they have added to the class. Otherwise, Frost Mages have gained a new ability. They've had a couple of abilities changed, several abilities removed, a couple of new glyphs. They have their brand new Draenor perks, and then the bulk of their changes comes from their talent tree. That's the same as it's been for all the mage specs. It's just the talent tree is where they've really done a lot of changes. The new ability that comes to the class is Amplify Magic. Blizzard felt that Frost and, well, all specs of mages did not have enough raid utility, so they introduced Amplify Magic, which amplifies the effects of helpful magic, increasing all healing received by 12% for all party and raid members within 100 yards. So basically, if there's a high damage portion of a raid fight, healers can call out for Amplify Magic to help mitigate that damage. Pretty cool little just new ability for mages to have. I'll go ahead and use it here. You can see the spell visual on it. Just imagine that going across like 30, 40 raid members. It's probably a pretty cool, visual effect. There are three major changed abilities with the Frost spec. One of them is extremely minor, and that is Cone of Cold is gone from a 10-second cooldown to a 12-second cooldown. Extremely minor. However, the next one here is a major change for Frost Mages, and that is Deep Freeze can now be broken by damage. This is a huge PvP nerf for Frost Mages. Deep Freeze has been there for a very long time, and it has been used as a CC to do tons of damage to characters in PvP, and now it will no longer be there. It is simply it will be just simply an instant cast CC, which you cannot do any damage to that character while it is in Deep Freeze, or else it will be broken. So major PvP nerf right there. The third change to the abilities of a Frost Mage is Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze used to proc off your bomb talents, and the bomb talent tier has literally been exploded. So they have changed it to your Frost Bolts have a 60% chance to cause the Brain Freeze effect, and it still is an instant cast Frostfire Bolt. So not much of a change there that you should notice too much, but just know that it does proc off of something different now. There are several abilities that Frost had removed from the spec. Most of this is because Blizzard looked at the Frost spec and all the mages specs really, and they asked themselves, what abilities do Frost mages really use? Do they really use these abilities? And then if they felt that they don't, they got rid of it. So Frost mages lost Burning Soul, which was your reduction in casting time lost when you took damage. They lost their 4-second interrupt, or I should say silence. They lost Conjure Mana Gem, which is not that big of a deal because mana is really no longer important unless you are an Arcane Mage. All DPS classes that use mana are pretty much having mana as a resource eliminated from them, which I don't understand the ideology behind that because, they've done so much work in adding resources to like Ret Paladins and so forth that really didn't have to worry about a resource in the past, and now they're basically saying that it's not important anymore for you to have to worry about mana. So you're never going to run out of mana as a Frost Mage, you're never going to run out of mana as a Fire Mage. The only one you have to worry about is Arcane. So don't worry about Conjure Mana Gem being gone. Other than that, as far as the spec is concerned, Frost lost Mage Armor, Arcane Explosion, Evocation, Molten Armor, and Flame Strike. Flame Strike and Arcane Explosion share a button with Blizzard. It just switches dynamically depending on the spec you're in. Same thing with the armors. Armors are now passive abilities now. You don't have to apply them to your character. So Frost Armor is automatically applied to the Frost spec, and all of its, enhancements are still intact in the same way. If you noticed, I said Evocation is also gone. Once again, don't worry about it because, as I said, mana doesn't matter anymore. I know, though, that people are worried about the heal from Evocation being gone via the glyph, so that's been addressed, but not, to be honest, in a very good way. The glyphs of a mage There are 2 new ones and 1 changed one, or 1 removed one I should say, for Frost. The first of which is Glyph of Interruption. When you successfully counterspell a target, the remaining cooldown on counterspell is reduced by 4 seconds. This shares it says exclusive with Glyph of Counterspell, which basically means you cannot have Glyph of Interruption and Glyph of Counterspell on your active glyphs at the same time. You can only have one or the other. The other new glyph is going to be Glyph of Regenerative Ice, which is where Blizzard tried to, I guess, fix the evocation thing. You regenerate 4% of your maximum health every 1 second for the duration of Ice Block. Ice Block's cooldown is kind of lengthy, so I don't know how popular of an option this is going to be honest. There is one interesting glyph here. It is Glyph of Icy Veins, which interacts with one of the new stats, which is your Icy Vein now grants 30% multi-strike instead of spell haste. So that will be an interesting one to kind of look at and see if you want to do. And then there's one that Frost lost, and that is Glyph of Frostfire Bolt. That is now a fire spec only glyph. So they have a little bit more changes to glyphs than the other specs, but overall not too bad. That being said, there are the Draenor perks that have been put into the game. These are the perks that you get for leveling to 90, from level 90 to level 99. These are the perks that you'll get each time you level. Frost really didn't get the great roll on perks. It's not like Fire where they got really an excellent serving of perks. They got some passive damage buffs. The first of these is Enhanced Fingers of Frost, which Fingers of Frost can stack 1 additional time. There's Enhanced Frostbolt, which I believe was in the game at some point to some effect, which is Frostbolt's cast time has been reduced by 0.5 seconds. This effect is disabled for 15 seconds after you benefit from it. There's Improved Blizzard. Each time Blizzard deals damage, it reduces the cooldown of Frozen Orb by 1 second. There's Improved Frost Nova. After casting Frost Nova, the cooldown of Blink is reset. Improved Frostbolt, Frostfire Bolt, and Ice Lance are just straight damage increases. Improved Icy Veins increases the amount of haste gained from Icy Veins by 10%. I don't know how exactly that's going to interact with the Glyph of Icy Veins that has been changed to that multi-strike stat. The most important of all their perks, though, is Improved Water Elemental, which gives your Water Elemental a new ability, Water Jet. And this is something they played with putting in the game earlier, but then they decided not to go with it. It allows them to channel a jet of icy water at the target, dealing 9,000 frost damage to the target over 3.69 seconds. But the important part is that the Mage's Frost Bolts and Frostfire Bolts that hit the target while being blasted with icy water will grant a charge of Fingers of Frost. So I'm going to go ahead and use Water Jet right here. You'll see a steady stream, and you'll see my Fingers of Frost pop up, just like that. So it's a nice addition to the class. They originally planned on putting in the class and removing Freeze from it, but now it's put in as a Draenor perk, and we have them both. So that's definitely a nice change to the Frost spec as a whole. With that being said, the major changes of the class really come in the talent tree. Talent tree really from top to bottom has been changed significantly, so I'm going to have to go through it one by one from top to bottom. Starting with the top, this is the mobility tier, and Presence of Mind is gone. Presence of Mind was that ability that Blizzard kind of felt was overpowered and did not belong in the talent tree. So they took it out, and instead of getting rid of it, they gave it to Arcane Mages, who they felt were kind of understaffed in the utility department. So Arcane Mages got that as a special ability, and Evanesce has been the replacement for it, which you fade into Nether, avoiding all attacks against you for 3 seconds. Castable while another spell is in progress and unaffected by the global cooldown. I'll go ahead and show you the little spell visual that you get here. It kind of just makes you ethereal for a few seconds. So not a bad spell visual. It doesn't really fit in with the theme of the tier, which is mobility, but that's, I don't know if they'll change it in the future, but that's the way it is at the moment. Also, you should know that Ice Flows has had its, I believe it's 4-second requirement for abilities that has been removed, so that's not there anymore. The level 30 tier is a defensive tier, and you'll notice Alter Time is here. Alter Time used to be a baseline ability given to the entire class. Well, that's not the case anymore. Alter Time has had its damage modifier removed from the ability, and so now when you Alter Time, in this form, it basically will just be a health reset. So if you're about to be burst in PvP, you can use Alter Time to kind of change the, flow of battle and so forth. But that original DPS modifier where you could go back and get your old buffs, that's not going to be there anymore. The 45 tier has not changed really at all. The only change that I need to mention here is Ice Ward, and that is the frozen effect off of Ice Ward. It now shares a diminishing return with all root effects. This is something that's happening across the board with all classes, so don't consider this a nerf tier class because it's happening all over the place. Blizzard is basically grouping all of these abilities under large diminishing return umbrellas, so to say, and that is cutting down on the amount of CC in a battleground, in an arena, which is, in my opinion, it's making things a lot better. I've done a few arenas so far, and people are having to be a little bit more tactical about when they use their CC. They can't just continually blow CC because there's just diminishing returns all over the place. The level 60 tier is unchanged, still the same as before. The level 75 tier was the bomb tier. And as you notice, frost bombs on the left hand side here. That is now been changed into an AoE tier of sorts. So Blizzard really didn't like the bomb idea anymore, so basically each bomb, depending on your spec, it changes based on the spec. So it's kind of a good thing because it kind of gives a flavor to each of the bombs. Living Bomb didn't change much, but Nether Tempest and Frost Bomb did change a little bit. Frost Bomb no longer is a ticking dot and then it explodes at the end. It's a bomb that you put on there and then you trigger via your Ice Lance, a frozen Ice Lance. So I'm going to go ahead and show this to you. I'm going to cast Frost Bomb on the target, and then I got to cast Water Jets so I can just easily get my Fingers of Frost, and then I'm going to fire this Finger of Frost, and you'll see the explosion right there. So that has been the change to Frost Bomb. That's how it does its damage, is through that explosion. The other talents on here are Unstable Magic, which your Arcane Blast, Fireball, and Frostbolt have a 50% chance to explode on impact, dealing an additional 50% damage to the target and all other enemies within 8 yards. I can go ahead and show you this real quick and see what it looks like. A 50% chance is a lot better. You can see right there. You just see the explosion all over the place. So nice little change there, but to be honest, I honestly don't see this being taken compared to the other ones, just because I feel like PV, well, possibly with this spec I can see this being taken more by PvEers, because Frost Bomb's a little bit tricky how it activates and so forth. But this last talent here, Ice Nova, is the PvP talent of this tier. Ice Nova causes a whirl of icy wind around the target enemy or ally, dealing 7,800 frost damage to all enemies within 8 yards and freezing for 2 seconds. The primary enemy will take 100% increased damage, max 2 charges. Now it replaces Frost Nova, and Frost Nova has been changed from a 25-second cooldown to a 30-second cooldown, but if you choose this talent, it's going to shift back to a 25-second cooldown, and it has 2 charges, so consider it more of a 12.5-second cooldown. You can see I can go ahead and cast right here, and it'll freeze everything, and you see the new frozen animation there, which looks amazing. That frozen animation has been applied to Ring of Frost as well. But the most important thing of that is the fact that you can use it on other players. I'm going to go over here real quick, and I can use it on this player right here, and it will... Oh, I can't use it on that target at the moment, but you can use it... Take this scenario, for instance. You're in a battleground and all of a sudden your healer is just swamped by all kinds of melee attacking him. You can use Frost Nova on that healer, as I just did there on this Shattersun Marksman, and it will freeze the people around him. Here, I'll use it on this guy right next to the mobs, and you'll see I can get them off the healer. So that is a huge, huge DPS ability. I honestly don't see any PvPers taking anything but this right side talent for every single spec of Mage, to be honest. The level 90 tier used to be the mana regeneration tier, and as mana regeneration has completely been eliminated from the class, it has now changed. It is now just a DPS buff tier. This one I have at the moment, Incanter's Flow, basically magical energy flows through you while in combat, building up to 25% increased damage and then diminishing down to 5% increased damage, cycling every 10 seconds. So it just keeps going back and forth between 25% and 5% and back and forth while you're in combat. Honestly, it's bugged at the moment. It just goes up to 25% and then it just stays there. But it's meant to flow back and forth very much like the Druid's new Eclipse bar that just keeps going back and forth. Rune of Power had its mana regeneration modifier taken out, so it's just a straight damage debuff. Might see it in PvE, depends on how popular it is, but you probably won't see it in PvP just because it's a static place on the ground and you don't want to just sit there. And then Mirror Image, I know this was popular, but Mirror Image has now been taken out of the main spec of a main ability as a mage as a whole, and you now have to actually spec into it as a mage if you want to keep your mirror images. So that has been the major change. Now the level 100 talents are interesting. There's really no theme for the entire tier, but it's, you know, there's a theme per, I guess you could say, slot. This first slot is basically for all three specs is an addition to whatever your DPS buff is. In terms of Frost, it's going to be Icy Veins. So casting Ice Lance extends your Icy Veins by 2 seconds. Until we know more about damage numbers and how things are going, we don't know how popular this is going to be, but that's the basics of it. It's a passive. The one on the right hand side here is my personal favorite, which is Comet Storm, and it calls down a series of 7 icy comets around the target, each of which does 2300 frost damage split between all enemies within 4 yards of its impact point. So I'm going to go ahead and use it here. This is one of the coolest spell visuals in the game. Blizzard basically gave Mage all the cool spell visuals in the game. And getting used. It's pretty instant, does plenty of damage, really awesome. You can see even in my my damage over here on the left hand side, all the multi-strikes off of it. But definitely a really cool looking ability to have for mages, and considering how lame the other two are, I see a lot of PvPers taking this. I don't know if PvEers will take the other two. That's something we shall see. The middle one here is known as Prismatic Crystal, and it conjures a prismatic crystal at the target location, which is attackable only by the mage, and takes 30% additional damage. When the crystal takes damage, it instantly releases a burst of energy, dealing that damage split evenly between all enemies within 8 yards. To be honest, I don't see this being used in PvP because it's a static ability. Basically, it's one location, and the minute it pops up, everyone's just going to run from it. And it's a 1 minute cooldown, so its damage has to be pretty significant for it to be taken in PvP. So I'll go ahead and use it right here. And then I'm going to attack it, and you're going to see the damage being burst out across those mobs there. Interesting, but I honestly don't know how popular it's going to be to take. So that is the last of the level 100 talents. That is the last of everything about mages and frost mages in general. Honestly, I think all 3 specs of mages are in fantastic position, and I personally feel damage numbers haven't been decided yet, but I feel that they're all in an even position that they have not been in almost ever in World of Warcraft's history. So definitely a great start to Frost Mages. The next videos that I'm going to be looking into, I believe, will be Frost DK and Unholy DK. Otherwise, until then, I will see you guys later. Tearless out.